Good morning, gearheads, and welcome to the Speed City F1 on SiriusXM pre-race show for the 2023 Formula One Hungarian Grand Prix. We're just an hour away from the 11th race of the season, the 38th Grand Prix at the Hungaroring, just a few miles north of Budapest. We're set for what could be a thrilling race with an incredibly tight field. And the Hungaroring has been known to deliver a race that can shake up the normal competitive order.
It's me.
And with 7 teams represented in the top 10, we're expecting a great race. This is John Massigan. I'm joined by two of the most iconic voices in motorsport. One of the most recognizable voices of 2 and 4-wheel motorsports, and former ESPN pit reporter Jonathan Green, joining me here in the studio in Austin. And from his studio headquarters in Atlanta, the man who needs no introduction to motorsport fan, the voice of all that American fans know and love, Bob Varsha. Jonathan, before yesterday, I was prepared to start talking about the possibility of a record-breaking consecutive race win for Max Verstappen and Red Bull. But now we're talking about the man on pole position. This year, we were used to the familiar Red Bull at the top of the timesheets, but anyone else in pole, and even a 7-time world champion, is an eye-opener.
Yeah, and it's an eye-opener for the man you just mentioned, Max Verstappen, because that's the one, if there is an Achilles heel, and if there's anybody going to make him raise his game or make him a little bit jittery getting up in the morning and having his early morning coffee, it will be Lewis Hamilton. And his success here at the Hungaroring is second to none.
Bob Varsha, Red Bull has won every race this year, but the other team that this weekend that might keep Max Verstappen or Lewis Hamilton off the top step is McLaren. With the upgrades on the car and both drivers looking great, they could be disrupting normal service at the top, couldn't they?
Yeah, well, frankly, I'm still waiting to hear who these iconic guys you mentioned are going to be. Yeah, actually, McLaren's up there, and we talked about it yesterday. They produced a car that made a quantum leap at Silverstone 2 weeks ago in terms of their competitiveness. And here they are on a tight, twisty track that's the absolute antithesis of Silverstone, and they're quick here too. So that bodes well for the orange cars. And I wish them well today. Isn't it a little odd? It struck me that way, that back when we were bitching about how, it's Hamilton and Verstappen on the front row all the time, and now we get Hamilton and Verstappen on the front row, it's like, yeah, something new and different.
It's true. And I don't want to overplay the fact that Verstappen's car has been clearly head and shoulders above the field. But let's just, let's look at the fact that at the Hungaroring that it is difficult to pass, right?
Oh, absolutely it is. It's doable. Nigel Mansell showed us how doable it was back in 92, where I think he passed about 12 cars, including Ayrton Senna, and mostly on that run from turns 4 to 5. It's a quick blast uphill through a fast left-hander where you're in danger of putting all 4 wheels beyond the white line, should be noted. But yeah, if you have a sufficient performance gap or large enough attachments, as David Hobbs used to say, you can pass at this track, and it's going to be fun to watch.
Jonathan, you've been to the Hungaroring. Both of you guys have been, haven't you?
Oh yeah, I love the Hungaroring. It's a way out of town. Budapest is still a magnificent city. You're steeped in history and on the Danube. It really is absolutely beautiful. But the Hungarians treasure this event. They really do. If you can imagine, Hungary's in the middle of Europe. There's very few, certainly back in the day, back in the early 80s, that would have ventured to take a world-class event or a world concert into Hungary. And so Formula One was a trailblazer, and it remains so. And so it remains this jewel for the Hungarian fans of Formula One, because they respect the fact that Formula One came all those years ago, and Hungary was just sort of coming out of its own cultural way of being part of the rest of the world. They've had great soccer and all the rest of it, but Formula One has had a huge part in putting Budapest, in modern terms, on the map. Red Bull races have been there and many others, but it's an absolutely exceptional place to go. And the Hungarians are lovely people.
Yeah,
yeah, it is spectacular. When I went there, they were still showing all of the deterioration of a magnificent city in Budapest under communist rule when they were part of the Soviet bloc, before the uprising and all that unpleasantness, which left bullet holes in a lot of the downtown buildings that for all I know, may still be there.
Mhm.
But the last time I went, it had pretty much fully recovered, and it was a glowing, beautiful place to go once again. And Hungary has an interesting motorsports history. They had a very early racing star and a gentleman, and I'm going to mispronounce his name. I believe it's Ferenc Zis, who raced a Renault back in the 1930s and won races. And they've had many, many races over the years, but did not join the Formula One calendar beginning in 1950. But now that they're there, there's only, I believe, one track, Monza, that's had more consecutive Grand Prix than Budapest. And that's
And they've
the
just
home of the Italian Grand Prix of Monza.
yeah, and they've just extended
Yes.
this year for
Yeah.
another
For a long time.
a long time, yeah.
9 more years.
9 more years, which
Yeah.
is really, really impressive. And
Yeah.
you know, it's one of those tracks that I'm trying to think of a downside to it. There just isn't one. I mean, it's if you're a purist and you want fast corners, well, Hungaroring's not your place. But it really is a well, as it's been described, a kart track without the Monaco without the walls.
With all, yeah.
Yeah, very much.
Monaco without the houses, we used to call it.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting history. The story goes that when they bought the land, they acquired the land to build the track, there was one individual, a woman, who owned a chunk right in the middle of the track they were looking at, and she would not sell, which is how the Hungaroring came to have this, this image of a track running around this forest right in the middle of the track, which was left like conservation land, totally untouched. So the grass was long and the trees were thick, and the poor photographers marching around inside the track had grass up to their chest. And when it rained, it was not worth thinking about. I don't know if they ever got the land away from that lady, but they haven't done much with it, although they've made a lot of improvements to the outside, including parking, which the old track really didn't have. You went out by the highway and parked along the road verge and marched into the track.
Yeah, you did.
It's really a fascinating place. It really is.
One of my abiding memories was, and I didn't know about it until I got into the inner sanctum, was the Sunday night, have you signed up yet? And I didn't know what that meant yet. And so I kind of asked a few journalists. And basically, you signed up for the cavalcade out of the Hungaroring on a Sunday night. And that included drivers, teams, journalists, and everybody who wanted to go in the police-led cavalcade to the airport.
Right.
And all the Hungarian fans who weren't at the race would come out on the streets like we were royalty or whatever. And we were hooning down the road. I remember Mika Hakkinen overtaking me on the hard shoulder and going, that doesn't happen very often. Damon Hill coming around the other side. So it was a lot of fun. And of course, it was all, it was all one-way traffic, so no one was worried because the roads were closed. But
that's what we used to do on the Tour de France.
There you go.
Come off the high mountain finishes where there's only one road by joining the convoy.
Oh, that's great.
A lot of fun.
And they're expecting another huge crowd. They had 290,000 people last year, and they may have set another record again this year, because that was a record last year for the Hungaroring. So another huge crowd.
It's worth noting.
Continues, yeah.
It's one of the cheapest tickets in Formula One.
Yeah.
But compared to the U.S. races, which are exorbitantly expensive, I must say. I saw a post yesterday on Twitter, I believe it was, where the 3 cheapest races were Hungary. Of course, they went right out of my head.
I saw this
Spain, I believe.
Yeah.
Anyway, the 3 most expensive were all here in the United States.
Yeah, I'll bet. I'm going to say, if you don't want the glamour of Monaco and the expense of Monaco, or you want to go to the classics like a Silverstone, but that's busy too.
Right.
I would really recommend Hungary, because Budapest is such a beautiful city.
Oh yeah. Well, the first time I went there, as I mentioned, the communists had still been in power, and after World War II, Hungary, conquered by the Soviets, were ordered to build all these elaborate statues to the Red Army and to the glorious Soviet triumph, yada yada yada. But the Hungarians knew how to put a sting in the tail. They refused to illuminate these statues at night. So if you didn't see them in the daytime, And Budapest is a glowing city with the bridges and so forth. The lights of one half of the city. It's a divided city, Buda and Pest on either side of the Danube.
There you go.
And everything would be lit up at night.
Buda and Pest.
Yes.
Yeah. Except those Russian statues. They never got light.
That's funny. Well, it's exciting. This is what Formula One's all about, guys, right? You know, all over the world, the different cultures, we get to see everything. But let's talk about some racing because Lewis Hamilton set a new record for most poles at one track by stealing this pole away from Max by, what was it, 3/1000ths of a second?
3/1000ths of a second.
And actually,
closest.
I think it was 8,000ths of a second was
back to
Norris.
To Lando, yeah.
Sorry,
yeah.
Bob.
Oh, it's an incredibly tight grid. Poor Logan Sargent, and I'm giving away all the secrets of my starting grid coming up. But Logan Sargent in Q1 was 1.1 seconds off of the very fastest car in Q1. And he was eliminated. He's running caboose on the field again.
That is
so
crazy.
It's, I think it's the second tightest field by only the tiniest hair of a margin to Austria just 2 races ago, where we had the closest ever from front to back.
It's really, yeah. And Sergio Perez, of course, in the fight for his job, really is what it boils down to. At Red Bull, you're always in that fight. But he did make at least a step in the right direction by making it into Q3 for the first time in 6 races. Do you guys realize it was back in Miami the last time he made it in Q3, back on May 6th. I mean, that is crazy to think about that in that car. But I mean, do you guys feel like this just really is a true fight for his job right now?
I do.
I don't, for some reason, and I may be a fool, but I think they've got what they want in Perez. They just want him to raise his game a bit. They want a loyal number 2, a guy who will pick up the win, as he did earlier this year when it couldn't fall to his teammate. So I think they're going to give him extra slack. They may replace him eventually, but I don't think that's going to happen very soon. And then who do you replace him with?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I say that because they've just got a history of doing it, you know. I mean, Gasly, Albon, you know, et al.
Totally agreed.
You know, it's just the way of the Red Bull team, and there is no driver capable, unless you put Hamilton alongside him, of challenging him. And that, you know, I was listening to the checkered flag yesterday, and I thought that was an interesting point. They said, you know, Checo needs to, you know, and it reminded me of Massa and of Eddie Irvine. You know, there comes a time when you are the teammate to one of the greatest that you've got to just realize that is your role. And I don't mean to, you know, upset any Mexican fans, but that is his role, and it always will be. And whoever has that role, you know, and actually Ricardo could fit into it quite nicely, having, you know, been there, done that, got the T-shirt, and so much older than him. But Checo, you know, Checo is fighting it as he should, but there comes a time where you've kind of got to take the Eddie Irvine approach and go, okay, I am the number 2 to Michael Schumacher, as it was the case at Ferrari, you know, and as was Massa.
Yeah, he just
be number 2 to the best guy on the grid. That's no dishonor. And it's worth noting too, I think, that Checo traditionally has brought significant sponsorship with him.
Yes,
from Carlos Slim down in or Carlos Domit Slim, his son, down in Mexico.
And he's hugely
popular. And stuff.
He's huge.
Oh yeah,
popular.
And that's another factor. Yeah, he's a very popular guy.
And if you're listening for Chris Meadow this weekend, he is got the weekend off and will not be joining us. But we do have some clips. We
should call him.
I know. I think we should.
I saw him
just get his prediction at least.
Yeah, he was telling people on Twitter that he was at a wedding, and so he's not going to be here. He said, "But I am going to be following the race." I'm like, "Well, if you're following the race, why don't you give us
chip in?"
Chip in. All right, let's get our quick first break in. When we come back, we'll hear from Lewis Hamilton and the rest after this. You're listening to Speed City. Back after these messages. It was this computer.
Was it?
Yeah. I didn't think it had a speaker.
Wow, look at Rosberg all Miami'd up.
He's trying to compete with Danica. All right, I think we're still live on the YouTube and the Facebook. And who we got out here? We got Mike Bowles, so let's go Speed City. And we got TW says hello in Sasaswidi in Thailand, they would say, or something like that. D. Nelson says, good morning, L. How about that man, Lewis Hamilton? 104 poles. He says, my man. Get in there, Lewis.
You see that video of Christian Horner ripping Nico Rosberg to
No,
his face?
no. What did
Yeah,
he
they were
say?
on the grid. Well, apparently Nico had said some, possibly true, certainly his opinion, but biting things about Red Bull. May have been with regard to the way they handled the Nick DeVries situation.
Oh yeah.
And Horner just got right in his face and says, "Yeah, well, it's really easy to talk when you're not, the one putting his neck on the line, and when you got your championship and immediately left, and on and on and on." It was the old classic, them that can do and them that can't become commentators, and it was pretty spicy, I have to say.
I didn't see
Ooh,
that.
where would I find that? Is that on Sky?
Well, I saw it. It was on social media. There weren't any. It was a well-framed picture, which suggests they were on some kind of,
TV, yeah.
experienced camera, but there were no microphones in the picture. It was just sort of a.
Interesting.
Hey guys,
Yeah.
I saw our conversation sparked some thoughts here because TW says checking flights to Hungary for next year after the show.
There you go.
Yeah.
Hope you do better than I did. I arrived in Hungary, was looking for my hotel, and I got shaken down by a young cop. Cash on the barrelhead.
Oh
folks.
yeah.
Really?
Yeah. That was back in the Wild West days in Budapest.
Yeah.
It was the only time I ever flew.
Hi, this is
locked
Max Verstappen,
LNG.
and you're listening to Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
All right, so let's talk about Lewis Hamilton. 104 poles.
Amazing.
He was pretty emotional after this, and let's hear from Lewis Hamilton now.
It's night and day different today. It was literally, we turned it up on its head. Yesterday the car felt terrible. The balance was all over the place. It was very, very difficult to extract any performance from it, and we did great work overnight. This morning it all of a sudden came back alive and it felt great, and we were all pleasantly surprised. And then qualifying was a challenge for everybody, but we that last run was good. I'm really just full of joy, just really happy for everyone in the team. Honestly, everyone's been working so hard for such a long time. We've had to be very, very critical every time on debriefs of where the car's problem. Nothing's ever kind of been good enough. We've always been like, we need to do more. We have to keep pushing harder, and it's been tough for everybody. But everyone's continued to push hard, and definitely didn't expect this coming into this weekend, but we'll take it. And we just have to see if we can hold on to it tomorrow.
I love the fact that he talks about how the car he was struggling to balance, and then it just came to life, is the way he said it. It came to life.
It's often the way. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. It's like that's how hard it is for them to get it just right.
The windows are optimal with these cars.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to get 10 degrees higher. And I was listening last night to some of the post shows and stuff, and listening to some of the drivers talking about that. 10 degrees, a big difference. And we'll see what happens. And in terms of, I think it was Max that said, particularly in the rears, tire deg will be much higher than it was today. And we've had a kind of a, with this tire change, I mean, it's actually had more of a long-term effect than just qualifying. We ranted on about qualifying. That was fine. But rain hit Friday, and then Saturday was basically a who dares to use tires kind of session, where we really didn't get the form guide, and every commentator had no real answer to the form guide. Anthony Davidson putting his hands up, going, I really can't tell you who is on form this weekend. And that was because they weren't using as many tires as they usually do, but also they were holding back tires to to effectively save them for the race.
Cover their bets. Yeah.
And you know what?
It's really interesting. And I wonder, Toto Wolff recently said, we're done with this car. This is the 14. We're going to get rid of it. We're going to concentrate everything on the 2024 car while continuing to run the car we've got. I wonder if his opinion has changed based on what Lewis was able to accomplish. And certainly I would think George Russell will. when he can find his place in qualifying again.
Let's see if Hamilton can pull off a win. I think that might change his mind. But speaking of the man he's going to have to beat, let's hear from Max Verstappen. I thought he had a very interesting take yesterday.
I think so far the whole weekend has been quite difficult. Just to get the front and rear to sync up. One time is the rear, one time is the front. Qualifying was more the front. And then, of course, when you have these kind of issues, you can't really touch the car anymore through qualifying. So I tried to make the best of it with some tools. I think when I went into Q3, my first lap, and I saw that we were first, I was actually surprised because I didn't expect that after Q2, where I was still struggling a lot with the balance. And then, I just tried to push a little bit more in Q3 run 2, and the car didn't have it. So extremely sensitive over one lap so far this weekend. I think our long run looks a lot more competitive, so I'm quite happy with that. It's still going to be quite tough, I think, tomorrow to get in front. But if we are better on tires, then I still, predict a good race.
And do you feel that the way the car is now, it might actually work well in the race, for example?
Possibly. I mean, it's going to be warmer tomorrow. Normally, of course, that's even harder on tires. Normally also on rear tires. So it might help us. But yeah, so far, every time what we did on a one lap didn't really work. But every time we went into a long run, the car was actually not bad. So hopefully it's the same tomorrow.
There is that line that I was talking about. That's the key to this race, I think, is longevity of the tires, and therefore the choice between a two-stop and potentially a one-stop.
Yeah, the drivers refer to it as putting energy through the tires, and there's very little in the way of straightaways here, except for that start-finish straight. So the tires are constantly getting beaten. 8 right turns, 6 left turns, so the load is pretty evenly spread over the right side, left side tires, depending on which one is being leaned on. So yeah, I agree. And pit stops, I think, are going to be incredibly important. I have a nugget on that on our grid too. That's a real arrow in the quiver of McLaren, who've been doing outstanding pit stops lately. And that really could help. That's how you can gain track position in a place like this, is with a quick stop and undercutting or overcutting your opponents.
All right, hey, let me give out the phone number. It's 512-643-5483. Give us a call and tell us your opinion. 512-643-LIVE. And we have a caller on the line. We have Drew from Houston, Texas. Hey, Drew, you calling about the Haas F1 team?
Hey, how'd you know, huh?
Yeah, I know you're the Haas #1 fan.
That's right. So, I kind of chirped you last week saying we wanted to get rid of Gunther, and that got shot down. But the new headhunt I want is Magnussen. I think the speed Hülkenberg is showing relative to Magnussen. There's a point where your talent is given out, and whether they go get a young guy or they get another old guy, I think Magnussen's on his way out.
That's I actually said yesterday in our qualifying show that if there was a safe seat in Formula One, because of course that he came in to not save the team, but they brought him out of retirement almost, and he did a hell of a job pre-Hülkenberg. But no, there is no love lost in Formula One, and Gunter's just as tough as anybody. Look what happened to Schumacher. So you could well be right.
I mean, and I get. Look, it's been a while since Haas has been very far up in the Constructors' Championship, right? Yep. And
suddenly it matters.
And it absolutely. And all of a sudden you now have money. You've got MoneyGram. Speaking of money,
yep.
They've got real money. They're bouncing up against the cost cap. Gunther said that himself. So to Drew's point, it's time to start seeing. Look, we're seeing all these other teams. We've got Aston Martin doing great this year. Now McLaren jumping to the top. Alpine's looked good. I know those teams have pretty huge budgets, but if we are bouncing up against the cost cap.
And I say to Drew, watch 2 men in the second half of the season and look at their records, and that's Magnussen and Perez. And if they improve in the second half of the season, jobs are good, as we say. But
you just hit my conspiracy theory. So I want Checo to keep doing poorly, get kicked out of Red Bull. He'll come to Haas, and we'll have a North American-centric team.
Whoa! Like it.
Yeah.
There's a 30,000-foot view.
I like that. Nice work.
That's the one we want. So, all right, gents, love the show. We'll keep listening.
Thanks, Drew. He's thinking 6 moves ahead, isn't he?
Yeah.
It's interesting. I don't think Magnussen's job is in jeopardy. Obviously, he hasn't forgotten how to drive a race car. But what's interesting is in recent years, we've seen drivers step away from Formula One, then come back and do well. I'm thinking one of the early ones to do it was Alonso, and I'm not talking about when he decided to go IndyCar racing and all that sort of thing, but years ago in his Minardi phase and thereafter, he took a year away. Esteban Ocon did it. Daniel Ricciardo has now done it, and Ricciardo looks like he's come back a rejuvenated fellow. Maybe that's what Kevin needs, just to spend more time in the simulator. If it comes to it, and Haas decides they need to make a change, at least keep Kevin around. He knows the organization so well. Let him, try to catch his breath, as it were, on the simulator, and by watching from the outside of the race and spending more time with the engineers. I don't know. I'd be very surprised if they let go of Magnussen. But as we pointed out time and again, it's very short memories in Formula One.
Yeah, no kidding.
All right. Well, I want to hear from Lando Norris, and then we'll talk about his qualifying.
I think we've probably surprised ourselves a little bit to be as competitive as we were today. We're closer to pole position than we were in Silverstone, and we definitely didn't expect this, So I think we still expected to have a good qualifying and a good result coming into this weekend. But to be 800ths off pole position, I didn't think we were expecting. So a nice surprise, a good day for us, with Oscar and P4 at the same time. She would say the top team, but just didn't quite have the pace of the Mercedes and the Red Bulls today to fight for pole, even though it's only 800s. So no, the team has done a great job. McLaren should be excited and happy, because we've taken some good steps forward. So we continue to do that, but today was a good day.
Are you optimistic for race pace? Definitely at least holding P3 and maybe more?
That's a tough one. I think the race pace yesterday looked pretty strong, but it's a much more difficult track to overtake on comparing to Silverstone. So some question marks, I guess. It's going to be a lot harder tomorrow than it was yesterday. But the pace was good today. The pace was good yesterday. So if we can just put it together, I think we can have a good battle. And maybe it comes down to lap one, the start, the strategy, the pit stops, or pit stop. I think that's something we have to make sure we're prepared for.
Good point from him about the start here.
Very good, very good point. I was watching the Formula 2 last night and seeing how long it's further than I thought to the first corner. It's quite a long run,
and it's downhill.
Yeah, it's a really good classic start to a race. Well, there's time to do something.
And think about
it's a very tricky corner.
Yeah, and think about the starts lately. Lando last race in Britain started better than Max, and Lewis Hamilton's a great starter. I mean, Max could find himself in third after the first corner
easily. And the key to today, which makes it so intriguing, I think, of all the races we've had this year, is that both Red Bull and Mercedes are without their sparring partners, effectively. But McLaren are in a great strategic position to do something very different than the two in front. In other words, could they put Piastri on hards, for example, and let him go long, but put Lando on mediums, and so therefore hair and carrot, so to speak, and throw Piastri into the mix, because I think Piastri is performing at the same level at the moment, if not far off, to Lando. So this could be a really interesting McLaren strategy today.
Yeah.
Well, keep that in mind. Lando's in his 6th or 7th season. Piastri has 10 races in his Formula One career. Hey, Jonathan, where's Lando's accent come from?
That's so funny you say that. He's now concocted this strange. He's from Somerset, but he's got this. He's got this strange, almost Italian stroke. I don't know what it is. I think he's been
hanging out with all these different accents. Very likely.
Yeah. I love listening to British accents, because for such a small country in size, there are so many different dialects and accents.
Well, I can't put it. He has no distinct British accent, that's for sure.
No, for sure. Yeah.
Reminds me of Mazepin.
Mazepin, yeah.
Remember Mazepin's accent? He sounded like just a proper British. I just was always stunned by that.
Yeah.
Well, that's how they learn. I mean, Zhou Guanyu is the same way.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing.
Open tongue?
Is if you are of a foreign, the sort of swear words and get in there and all that sort of stuff that the mechanics use comes out as a vernacular, and it's very funny to see a Chinese or an Asian driver, come out with these expressions. Guangzhou Joe is a very good example of that, and Yuki as well. Yuki's English was hysterical.
It is. I was watching a Drive to Survive yesterday with Yuki on it, and he was just. It almost didn't even make sense at times.
I misspoke. He's from
He
Bristol.
learned all the dirty words
England.
first.
Oh, Lando's from Bristol?
Bristol, which isn't far from Somerset, but yeah.
All right, well, this show is flying by. We got to sneak another break in, and when we come back, we're going to hear some other drivers, including Oscar Piastri. You're listening to Speed City F1. Back after these messages.
Hello to Chris if he's watching from somewhere.
Yeah, good point. He might be.
What, Medellino? Well, Chris, if you're listening, you can't be taking days off. I mean, that's just
Yeah, what does he think this is?
We're giving you, we're giving you the week, the midweek off. I mean,
yeah,
really, yeah. Tell your friend to get married on Wednesday.
Yeah, exactly.
You could probably get a better rate on the reception hall.
I'm trying to block all the spam on our YouTube channel. Somebody's putting out one of those live streams of the race, and I'm trying to block. But hey, Drew says Canada was also affordable compared to USGP.
Yes.
I saw that same graphic, Bob.
That's
It was Miami was the most expensive, believe it or not, more than Vegas. It was $580 or something. And then Austin and Vegas are both in the 500 range.
Yeah, if you're looking for a cheap holiday, I don't think Vegas is in your...
I don't care how cheap the ticket is, try to find a hotel. So
yeah, I think Montreal is still the best value for the dollar in Formula One.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah. TW says he had the same problems in Thailand with the police that you guys are talking about. Give me $10 just to pass.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Well, this cop that stopped me, he was a young guy with this gigantic pistol on his hip, and his uniform shirt was open down to his sternum, down the base of his rib cage. So, I mean, he was obviously a real honcho. And can't even remember what I had to pay him, but yeah, the change in Budapest has been remarkable. And if we're in a geopolitical study, the modernizing of Budapest happened through sports.
Yeah,
started going there for prize fights and all kinds of different sporting events, and the whole country kind of blossomed. I wouldn't put it all on sports, but I think it was a great analogy to what we're seeing now in the Middle East and elsewhere.
Yeah, I did the first Red Bull Air race there, and I was amazed at the transformation. Amazing.
TW commented on the clothing. Here we go. I'm getting no music, by the way.
Hi, this is Karun Chandok, and you're listening to Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
CrowdStrike presents Driven in 60 as the official cybersecurity partner of the Mercedes-AMG Petronas Formula One team. CrowdStrike protects against cyber threats so the team can focus on what matters, their next win. The revolutionary cloud-native unified CrowdStrike Falcon platform harnesses the speed and power of the cloud to protect and defend organizations of all sizes against increasingly complex threats, stopping breaches before they happen. Because on and off the track, the stakes couldn't be higher. A split second can make the difference between victory and defeat. When every second counts, protection shouldn't slow you down. It should fuel your momentum. CrowdStrike, protection at every turn. To learn more and to try CrowdStrike Falcon free today, visit crowdstrike.com/XM. All right, gentlemen, I said I was going to play the Oscar Piastri clip because we've been talking about what a great driver he's been in the last couple of races. So let's hear from Oscar.
Yeah, happy, very happy. I think it's been a very encouraging day for the whole team to be at the front once again. I think for myself wasn't the cleanest of Q3 laps, but to challenge the top three would be difficult. I think I would have had to put a very good lap together. So, I'm pretty happy with P4. We'll see what we can do tomorrow, but all in all, it's been a good day.
Within touching distance of the podium, you're going to be trying to get that tomorrow, aren't you?
Oh, definitely. We'll try our best. I think we can go into it realistically trying to challenge for the top three now. We've seen this weekend how tight everybody's been, and including Red Bull. So Yeah, we'll see what we can do. Try and get that podium. It's going to be a very different race to Silverstone. A lot hotter, a lot more tyre deg, probably more pit stops as well. So we'll see what happens.
I'm starting to really like this guy. I remember last year saying this guy better be really good because there's a target on his back. If you remember the whole Piastri gate story of him being, I was like, wow, you're gonna throw Ricardo's career away and pay him $23 million, which by the way is stopped being paid.
He was showing his attachments during that, as Bob alluded to earlier with David Hobbs. But during that whole process, I was thinking, who does this kid think he is? He's just, doing this amazing, silly season, craziness. But he's showing the speed, isn't he?
Either he's doing it on the track for sure, but either he's incredibly level-headed or he is getting great advice from somewhere. Because recall when he came into the sport, right? Mark Webber, exactly, his manager. He was very quiet. He turned down a lot of interviews. Really had nothing much to say. I used to joke about how he never smiled, but look where he is right now. He has come along. His confidence has grown. He speaks more often. He smiles a lot. He is definitely the revelation of the season thus far as I'm concerned.
When I was looking at the way Piastri was reacting after last week, I was like, oh, he's kind of opening, he's kind of blossomed. Obviously, that helps when you have a great race like that. But I also don't see too many drivers with the old school fire and competition outside of Max Verstappen, right? Can y'all think of any? Because I think of the one thing that makes drivers great and at the very next level is that they cannot stand losing. That competition fire, and I think that's the thing that's across all athletes, is that they have that unbelievable desire to win and not lose. And I don't know if Piastri has that. It's too early to tell. But what other drivers besides Max and Lewis, maybe? He just, Lewis has that fire too. And and I'm not saying these drivers aren't fantastic, but I just don't see that old school fire that I'm thinking about.
No, I think you're absolutely right.
You also don't see great highs and lows in their personalities. Good day, bad day. That was the day. On to the next one. He doesn't start throwing things or leaping around. Of course, we'll see when he makes his first podium. But I think this guy's got a measured approach, and I think you're right, Jonathan. I think a lot of it is down to Webbo.
Yeah,
and he's going to be a force.
I never see him. But maybe this is
never falls off the racetrack.
Like Bob is saying, you do have to have a level head to be a race driver, right? It's like I've said this before. Like quarterbacks have to forget that interception, right? They have to move on. One bad corner, you got to forget it.
That's the key to a great racing driver. Yeah,
right. But is it right? How do you mix that fire that you don't want to lose, that you want to win at all costs, with the level-headedness? That's the magic recipe, isn't it?
Yeah.
My thing with
you got to have.
Go ahead, Bob.
Well, I was going to say, you got to have the nerves of a burglar and the memory of a relief pitcher.
That's great. Nice analogy. Yeah. I was going to say what struck me about Piastri, and it's ironic because it struck me about Lando, which is when Lando arrived in Formula One, and now with Piastri the same, you just felt like, that interview at Silverstone, he belonged.
Yeah.
There was no, I am so happy to be here and so honored to be on the top of, on the podium. No, it was like, second was good today. We got the best out of the car, blah, 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 as though he'd been doing it forever. And the Lando was the same when he hit the front, and when he got that front row in Austria, it wasn't, it wasn't expected, but it was like, I've been working on that.
Hey, let me grab the phone number again, because we are creating a list to give away some tickets to COTA. We gave away a pair last race, and we're going to give another pair soon.
And they're for February, right?
Yeah. Phone number is 512-643-5483. 512-643-LIVE. We want to hear what you have to say about what you're expecting today. But let's continue to look down the grid, because we've been, in fact, you know what, Bob? If you're ready, why don't you walk us through the rest of the grid?
Okay, here we go. And I've done something a little different this week. I've tried naming the rows. Let's see how clever I think I am. Starting on row one, world titles out the wazoo. On pole, Lewis Hamilton from Mercedes, ending his longest run without a pole at 34 Grand Prix going back to 2021. And yet, the seven-time champion extends two all-time records with his 104th career pole and his 9th at any single track. Today, he goes for his 9th victory in Hungary. Starting next to him, his arch rival, Max Verstappen in the Red Bull, just 0.003 of a second behind Hamilton. The championship leader sees his streak of consecutive poles end at 5, and it's only his second front row start at the Hungaroring. Row 2, papayas by the pair. Lando Norris in the McLaren coming off his career best tying finish, second at the British Grand Prix, that is. Norris has also benefited, and this is important to me, from the fastest pit stops at the previous 2 Grand Prix, a factor that could be huge on this tight circuit. Next to him, his teammate, Oscar Piastri, also coming off his best qualifying and finishing positions in Britain, a circuit that's the complete opposite of Hungaroring, which means McLaren have developed a car that could be a contender anywhere. Row 3, good news and bad news. Zhou Guanyu of Alfa Romeo, another surprise in qualifying as a big update package on the Alfa, launched the Chinese driver to his career best start, 4 places higher than he's ever done before, and ahead of both of the factory Ferraris, one of which starts next to him. P6, Charles Leclerc, starts outside the top 5 for the 3rd time in the last 5 races. On to row 4, more of the same. P7, Valtteri Bottas for Alfa Romeo, a former winner here with Mercedes. Bottas has his 10th consecutive top 10 start in Hungary, delighting the traditionally massive Finnish contingent in the crowd. P8, Fernando Alonso in the Aston Martin, 1 place higher than he started at Silverstone 2 weeks ago. Alonso remains the only driver to reach Q3 in every race this season, but he has never won here in Hungary. Row 5, proof that it ain't what you got, it's what you can do with it. Number 9, Sergio Perez in the Red Bull, a 2-time winner this season, reached Q3 for the first time in the last 6 races. Next to him, P10, Nico Hülkenberg in the Haas. The team qualifying specialist makes his 6th top 10 start here in the 11th round of the season, and the Haas cars are really quick in a straight line. Row 6, aka, what are you guys doing back here? P11, Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari started on the front row on last year's grid, but despite being just 1/3 of a second off the quickest time in Q2, he was eliminated for the first time this season. P12, Esteban Ocon in the Alpine. The Frenchman took his first and thus far only career win 2 seasons ago with some selfless help from then teammate Fernando Alonso, who you remember kept the threat from Lewis Hamilton at bay with some great defensive driving. Row 7, haven't I seen you before? P13, Daniel Ricciardo in the AlphaTauri. The much-traveled Aussie said he felt right at home getting back into a Formula One car, replacing Nick de Vries. He then proved it by delivering AlphaTauri's best grid position in the last 5 races. Next to him, Lance Stroll in the second Aston Martin started 3rd for this race back in 2020. Also, the only time he scored points here in 6 previous visits. Row 8, remember when I used to be quick? P15, Pierre Gasly in the Alpine. Mr. Roller Coaster in qualifying. In 11 races this year, including this one, he's reached Q3 7 times, was eliminated in Q1 3 times, and out in Q2 once, that being yesterday's qualifying. Next to him in P16, Alex Albon in the Williams made it to the top 10 shootout in Q3 the last 3 races in a row, but out in Q1 here. Row 9, my teammate is starting where? P17, Yuki Tsunoda. AlphaTauri failed to advance out of Q1 for the 4th straight race, the longest drought of his young career. P18, George Russell in the Mercedes. You thought Carlos Sainz had a bad day in qualifying? Last year, Sainz started 2nd while Russell was on pole, but he was caught out in traffic in the dying seconds of the Q1 session. Row 10, if I didn't have bad luck, I'd have no luck at all. P19, Kevin Magnussen in the Haas, fastest man in a straight line on Friday, but the Dane, who became a daddy for the 2nd time this week, posted his 5th Q1 elimination in his last 6 starts. Next to him, Logan Sargent in the Williams. The American was a mere 1.1 seconds off the best lap in Q1, a margin second only to the record close qualifying in Austria 2 races ago, but still, the Yank was out in Q1 and starts caboose on the field. So there you have it.
Excellent.
Nice job. I like the road titles, Bob.
Now you got to keep it up.
Yeah, that's what I was afraid of.
Hey, Bob, normally you get interrupted about 4 times by Chris Medlin, but we are watching Martin Brundle. He's actually interviewing Jerry Bruckheimer right now.
Yeah.
And they say the movie, Brad Pitt movie, that he's director or producer of, whatever he is, but is going on still this weekend, even though the strike is happening. Apparently some of the people that are not in the union or whatever are still doing this. So they're still doing some of the filming for that movie. What's the team hat, Jonathan?
I think they got permission to do it.
Yeah. The team is like GXP or something like that.
Yeah.
It's on the APX is what it's on the hat.
APX, that's it.
You know, it's been interesting, this movie, because it's given them an opportunity to put an 11th team and, in a garage and give us
good point.
Give us a little taste. And who is that, Jonathan? We have several Americans.
We got a heck of a grid going on. I'm trying to. There's all sorts of folks.
That's Michael Strahan.
He's lost weight.
He's lost weight.
I was about to say he's lost a lot of weight. Michael Strahan. Ah, wow, cool.
And they had Terry Crews, and they've all. It's funny. I think people are maybe getting a little note because they're all giving Brundle the time of day. In other words, their bodyguards aren't shooing them away. It's pretty good.
Yeah, don't pull a Cara Levine on him or Cardi B, whoever that was in the U.S.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, when we come back, we'll be less than 15 minutes from the start of the 2023 Hungarian Grand Prix. You're listening to Speed City F1. Back after a quick break.
Actually,
we got a caller.
Okay. Well, we're going to bring him on, right?
Yeah. Well, we'll bring him on after the break.
Yeah. But I got to quickly tell you a story. It was funny, actually. For the whole weekend at Miami, I kept saying to the Formula One producer, just tell me who the celebrities are. I need a list. Now, he sent me it on Friday. I showed it to you guys. Yeah.
And they have a picture of everybody.
Yeah. And I just didn't want to do a Brundle and be, suddenly in front of somebody that I didn't know who the heck they were. And by my word, I'm glad they sent it me because there was something like 32 names. Yeah. A lot of which I did know and a lot of which I didn't.
I saw that list, yeah. Yeah, I didn't recognize Strahan. He's not his fighting weight anymore.
No, he's not at all. He's lost a lot of weight.
I don't watch the morning show. And is he doing like a?
I think he left Good Morning America, but he's still doing some sort of
Well, he left live with Kelly.
That's it, live with Kelly.
And he went to GMA, and I think he's still there.
Oh, okay.
But like you, I haven't watched in a while.
Yeah, but very good. By the way, a fantastic broadcaster in my mind. Very, 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 very good at.
Got to envy these guys who do the morning shows, and then they go do the football shows on Sunday.
I know.
And I think Strahan goes back and forth across the country.
He does.
Do that too.
Hey, Casey?
Yeah, he does the football as well. Yeah, you're right.
Talkback's not on? Did we lose our caller? Oh, okay. When we come back, we got a caller. Bob.
Tell him we love him.
Bob from California. Okay.
He's up early.
Yeah.
Yeah, he is.
Good point.
Those callers yesterday were awesome.
Huh?
Those callers yesterday were great. We've got to clip them up.
Yeah.
I love Bryn's accent.
Yeah. Wales.
Hello to everyone, this is Gunther Steiner, this is Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
The Speed City F1 pre-race show on SiriusXM is brought to you by CrowdStrike. Stop today's most sophisticated cyber attacks at the office, the racetrack, and everywhere in between. Learn more at crowdstrike.com/XM. We have a caller. We have Bob from California up early. Hey, Bob, how are you?
Hey, good morning, guys. Great show. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, what do you think? What are you getting ready for today? What's exciting you for the Hungarian Grand Prix?
Oh, I want to see a good race. I pull for the Haas team. You got to love it. Gene Haas and his contributions. But I'm really hoping Michael can put something together where we can truly get an American team on the grid. I grew up watching races in Riverside. So I go way back. My dad was a big Dan Gurney fan, and I just like to see that.
Any messages from anybody right now? And one week I'll say Andretti's in. This is going to happen. They're crazier. How could they say no to Andretti and Cadillac? And then the next, I'm going, and Michael himself came out and said he went knocking on every door and tried to buy a team, and all of them said no. So I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm just like you. I'm really hoping that this will happen.
Yeah. Our buddy Chris Medlin wrote an article recently about how he feels that Andretti will clear the first hurdle, which is the FIA saying, okay, you're good. But then you got to go to the folks from Liberty Media, Formula One management, and so on. And you're right. We've had very little information. I would love to see these documents that they had to submit. Hundreds of pages is what Chris described, but I doubt that he's seen them either. If he did, they'd probably kill him to keep this secret. Yeah, it's interesting on so many levels. The people involved. I thought the biggest barrier was that teams were afraid that he would come in and his team would do very well early on, and that affects everybody else. Chris said no. He said some teams want him, and I don't think I'm speaking out of turn here, but he said that he's spoken to several people who want Andretti to gain entry so that he can come in and fall on his face and see that it's a lot harder than he thought it would be. I don't think Michael Andretti and the people around him are underestimating the difficulty of success in Formula one little bit. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. And I love that point about how the movie crew is proving you can put an 11th team in the pit lane. And Hungary is one of the toughest places to put another team.
Good point.
Hey, California Bob, are you listening from the car? Did I hear? It sounds like.
Yeah, I'm actually working. I work for UPS. This is my last week.
Perfect.
I've been
You're
there
getting out
40 years.
before the strike. Huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Bob, I was about to ask you what kind of car you're driving, but a big brown box does not classify as an exciting.
Better question for Bob. Bob, who's going to deliver today?
Hey, you know what?
Great question.
I think Lewis is going to do it, man.
Hey!
And I really hope for everybody. You know, we have a good race and a little competition, and give Max a little run for his money.
All right, well, don't drive too fast in that big brown thing.
That's really, and get to a TV. You're running out of time.
He's going to listen in.
I got it taped, man. I got it taped.
Got to listen. Isn't UPS still a sponsor on the Ferrari?
Yeah.
Is that why you're leaving UPS?
I think they are.
You know, I'm not sure. This year, I know in the past couple of years we were, but we were big in NASCAR for a while, and it was good to see it there.
With Dale Jarrett.
Right.
All right. Well, thanks, Bob, for tuning in. We really appreciate it.
Have a good day, man. You guys do a great job.
Hey, Bob, you know what? We'll keep your name. We'll throw your name in the hat for some of the tickets out here at Circuit of the Americas. So we'll keep your name on from the caller ID. Thanks, Bob.
All right. Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thanks, Bob.
Not
You're
you,
welcome.
Bob. The other Bob, California Bob.
I know. I meant that.
No, I mean, Bob was saying, never mind. The monkeys are out of the cage in here.
Right. If I'm on Zoom for the U.S. Grand Prix at Austin, you'll know I didn't get a ticket.
Yeah, pretty much.
Hey, guys, you know who we haven't talked about? Is Joe Guan Yu and the Alfa Romeo team. How about that, guys?
What is going on?
Well, they've got this radical new rear wing concept that everybody is looking closely at, but they've also done some underbody stuff and raised the nose, which I thought was kind of interesting. Get more air under the car, get more downforce, and obviously it seems to be working for them. We'll find out when they go to a fast place, which we're doing next week, by the way. Do not miss the Belgian Grand Prix.
Oh, God,
Spa.
yes.
Yeah, last before the summer break anyway.
Yeah, talk about back-to-back events that couldn't be more juxtaposed.
Yeah, and almost, you can really almost put the Hungarian Grand Prix in an iconic class like Spa. I mean, really, it's an amazing race. But Joe Guan Yu, career best fifth on this and crazy weekend with his teammate in Bottas in seventh. I mean, two of the Alfa Romeos in the top 10 and the top 7.
And that there is no sort of shenanigans going on there with weather or they got lucky or anything.
I mean, you could throw the tire thing, maybe.
It's safe for everybody,
but
though.
Yeah, I was just going to say,
Yeah.
No, very
Position
impressive.
on the racetrack. Yeah. As George Russell found out, wrong place, wrong time. No luck.
If I was Verstappen Duck Technique in Audi, sitting at home going, that's my team in the future, I'd be well pleased with the progress.
Yep. And let's see, Daniel Ricciardo. It's amazing we haven't talked about him much
Amazing.
this morning because it was a really, a telling thing that they out-qualified his teammate. It was a tiny margin, but it was 4 places.
I was about to say, yeah, let's just put a footnote on that because it sounds as though Ricardo's walked into the team and shown the kid what to do. It was thousandths of a second.
Right. But all of them are thousandths of a second now. That's the crazy thing.
I'm not going to take anything away from Yuki.
I know.
Yuki's on it.
He's become a very likable character, hasn't he?
Well, and even Helmut Marko, I think, said, beware. Yuki's quick, and he is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if more than one team manager or team executive agrees, a la Oscar Piastri, if everybody agrees that you're good, the chances are that you are. Yeah. And we mentioned it yesterday, but let me say again that Yuki was very gracious toward his departed teammate, Nick DeVries, the Formula Junior champion and Formula E world champion and so on and so forth. He said DeVries's feedback to the engineers was a revelation to Tsunoda, who's had several different teammates now. And he said DeVries was Niki Lauda-like in his ability to tell the engineers what the car was doing. And
that's
the kid
interesting.
was really impressed by that.
Yeah.
All right, guys, I want to play this clip from Fernando Alonso because he talks about the tire format from yesterday. Let's hear from Alonso.
I'm quite happy, quite pleased with the car. We struggled a little bit in practice, but we made a few setup changes, and in qualifying the car felt good, felt fast out there. But obviously, the times are so tight between all of us, and 1/10 to P4. 4/10 to pole position, which is quite an average gap that we had this year. But instead of being P3 or P4 on the grid, now we are P8 because the times are so close. So this is the way it is. Let's try to recover some places tomorrow.
Put us in the cockpit in Q1. How are the stress levels, anxiety levels on the hard?
It was very stressful, more than normal for sure, because we didn't test the hard tire until Q1. The format, I think it was very bad this weekend. Obviously, we need to try and check, and I think the feedback is quite negative. We've been saving tires the whole weekend in free practice just to allow us to have new tires in Q1 and Q2, but obviously because you never test the hard tires, in Q1 it's a little bit of a guess. And the free practice, we didn't run enough because we didn't have tires to run in free practice. So I guess if you are a spectator on the grandstand, you will love to see cars on the free practice running.
I think he summed it up perfectly.
He did a fantastic job, didn't he, of breaking down all the different things. But the tire test, this format test, it's funny because we went on and on in our little echo chamber yesterday in a post-qualifying show about how we didn't like it. But there's several people out there that thought they really liked it. In fact, we had somebody posting on our YouTube channel saying, "Hey guys, I really respect you guys, but I completely disagree."
Interesting. Yeah.
So it's
David Lawrence wrote that.
Yeah.
And I'm so tempted. Maybe I will write him back because I disagree with his disagreement. But that's a story for another day.
I think let's all write to it now.
Well, he said, you're gonna give teams more strategic options. Actually, you're giving them fewer. Because the only way that an inferior performing car, all other things being equal, is going to beat a better performing car is by going to a quicker tire. And in qualifying, as we know, especially here at the Hungaroring, that is critical. But that option has now been taken away. If you're going to change tires, you got to use the same compound and construction that's designated for that particular section. And I think it takes a lot away.
That's going to be interesting to see how this breaks down, Bob. But we got 60 seconds. I want to get your prediction, Mr. Varsha.
Oh, gee whiz. I think Lando Norris wins. Second is Max Verstappen. And third place is Charles Leclerc.
Ah, okay. Jonathan Green?
Hamilton, Lando, Leclerc.
Okay, I'll go. I'll take the safer route. I'll say Hamilton, Verstappen, Lando Norris. All right, we're out of time, but hey, stay right here for the race. And after the race, our full 1 hour post-race show. We want to hear from you, so we'll see you after the race.